Hey everybody, Brett Allen here with the Brett Allen Show, chatting more Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. I love these interviews. This is so much fun. Today we have Tina Parker, actress, director. She played the very iconic Francesca Liddy, Saul Goodman's assistant in Breaking Bad, and of course Better Call Saul, which just ended sadly. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, well, I think out of there's many characters on the show that people love, but I think your character we love, and even more so in the Better Call Saul world because we really got to see a different side of you, a different side of her. And I'm going to mention this now. I'm getting ahead of myself before I forget because I think, I got invited on another show recently and we were talking about Better Call Saul ending. And one of the things that came up multiple times was the fact that we got to see Saul's office like normal for a while before it became what we knew about. And your character had a huge part in that decision making process. So let's talk about it now that it's over. How does it feel to sort of, really have this whole thing now put to bed? Because you've been a part of this world for years.
Yeah, I will tell you, I watched the finale by myself at my house. Um, and it was, one, it was perfect. I loved the finale 1,000%. And I just was surprised at how I kind of sad to leave that world, that both worlds behind. Like it was truly the end of like an epic part of my life. I started Breaking Bad, 2009, I think. And then,
Yeah, right
I think
around there.
yeah, my last episode was in 2021 on set. So, big chunk of my life with a lot of the same, almost all the same crew, and just an amazing experience. So I was kind of I found myself a little sad at the end of it. Just from a personal standpoint, just knowing like, oh, when am I going to see all these people again? You kind of, not Francesca, she's only on, every so often, right? Like, I would
Yeah,
get,
but she's a very important character, though, for sure.
oh, yeah. I jokingly said in an interview recently, I was like, look, in finale, Saul says, um, you know, Walter White would have been in jail in a month had it not been for me. And I'm like, well, Saul would have been in jail in a month if I had flipped on him at any point because I knew, I mean, loyal to the end to a fault, you know?
Yeah, yeah. If anybody was in on the joke, it was your character
Oh, yeah.
because, but what I found interesting was, well, as a side note, I lived in Albuquerque for years
Oh,
and got to do some background work on Breaking Bad
oh, cool.
through White Turtle Casting, who handled that show for years. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And even before that, I can't remember her name, who managed the casting for that show. And then she sadly passed away. Um, but I tell you, it's just such an iconic part of that culture there in New Mexico. Um,
It's another,
and
and it is truly, Albuquerque is truly a character in the play to me,
it
or play
is,
in the show.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting because I remember watching an interview years ago that Bryan Cranston did about the show. Because if people don't know, like when this show first started, I don't know, the first season, second season, nobody was watching this thing, until like season 3 and 4. And then people really started to get into it. But he was like, Albuquerque plays just as much, or New Mexico plays just as much of a part in the show as everybody who's involved, down to the whatever you want to call it, like every single character, um,
Absolutely.
and just cinematically so beautiful. Now I don't know, the woman that owns Walter White's house, she's not quite so happy.
No.
She's I feel bad for her or anybody else really, but I think she seems to probably be the one to get the most unwanted attention from
Yeah. I mean,
fans.
when you get pizza thrown on your roof a lot, like I could see that would get
it's
old,
it's
or
terrible.
supposedly, I
Yeah.
think there's like a fence now because you have to take pictures farther away from it. And I'm sure the neighborhood's like,
Yeah,
really?
I've seen barricades. I don't know. I digress. But so anyway, your character, winding the clock back a little bit because you'd been a part of a few things, but this clearly was like a huge role for you, and just
Absolutely.
and very, which kind of, again, out of all the characters, all the ancillary stories, I think Francesca was the most fascinating, because really, when we see her in Breaking Bad, she's who she is. She's jaded. Life is tough for her, and no matter how much cash gets thrown at her, she's still a human being and wants to be treated as such. But when we see you in Better Call Saul, we get to see that more human side. You're excited, you're passionate. This is a big break for you to work for Jimmy and for Kim, and none of this is known yet. So when you get approached for this role, or you see this role, how did it come about for you? Did you audition for it? Did they reach out to you? How did it work?
There was just at the time in Breaking Bad, there was a local casting director named Tony Cabrock who was
Yes.
helping with locals casting during those early stages, I think, of Breaking Bad. Because I don't know that, that's right when kind of New Mexico was starting to come in its own of having more and more film production there.
Yeah, like
So I
Breaking
don't
Bad sort of was like the forerunner for people coming there and doing stuff.
absolutely. So Tony and I think Tony was doing some of the locals casting, and she's based in Dallas. And so when the call went out for the role, I got to go in, and I looked at the side, and I was like, no, this is going to be some blonde, big boobs lady. Because, the scenes that I read, I'm sure stuff got changed or whatever, but was very, he's making this kind of innuendos and this, that. And I was like, like I'm not as skinny blonde with big boobs or whatever, but I was like, well, I am what I am. So, you got to just, like, they're calling me in for some reason. So we just got to lean into, whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember like wearing an outfit that I felt really cute in. Like it was this kind of, I was into rockabilly at the time, kind of swing dancing, hilarious. So I wore this outfit like that. And I walk in, and there are a lot of blonde, like more business style ladies. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just be different today or whatever. But I had a great audition, felt good in the room. Tony thought I was funny. So I was like, great. So then I didn't hear anything for a while. So I was like, yeah, it is what it is. You felt good about it. And I remember sitting in another audition for like some Bite and Smile commercial, that I would never book because, as soon as I open my mouth, they're like, you're not a young mom or whatever, like happy young mom. Like, no, you're not. And my agent called me and was like, hey, can you be on a plane in like 3 hours? And I was like, well, what? And luckily I run a theater company, Kitchen Duck Theater here in Dallas.
Yes.
So luckily I wasn't in a play or doing anything at the time that I had to finagle. And I was like, absolutely, I can be on a plane. And that's how it kind of happened. It was very sudden and wild, and thank God I was able to get on that plane,
Yeah.
And I remember getting to the hotel room, and that's back, early days of the franchise. And so we'd get our sides in a little brown envelope to be left at left under your door or whatever. And I remember pulling out the thing and seeing Bob's name on the cast list, and I was like, whoa! Like I was just nerded out. Like I'm such a huge Mr. Show fan. I was like, you've got to keep it together. You've got to stay cool or whatever. I was so excited. And I did nerd out on him a little bit on the way back in the van, and he was very, very cool about it. But yeah, that's how it all started, was just an audition that I really didn't think I would get or that I was right for, but I was like, lean into it and see what happens. And luckily they, my tape somehow made it to Vince,
That's usually how it happens, though. There's usually like the cattle call of like, the type, and then there's always a few archetypes or antithesis to what they're looking for. And
well, and that's what they said. It like on there's that great, if people are listening and are fans of Saul, Breaking Bad, and aren't aware of the Insider podcast, like I highly recommend listening to it, just because you get to hear the creators talk about the episode. And somebody messaged me. It was during, I think, season 4, my big scene in Breaking Bad that I have with Brian when he breaks in the office, and we have I shake him down.
You're going to have
money.
to pay to fix this. That's so classic.
Like people always point out, they're like, you're the only person that walked down and lived or whatever. And I was like, yes.
That was such a great moment.
Oh my God, I loved it. And it was like so early on a Monday morning. And, I'm from Dallas. It was the day after the Mavericks won the championship. Like I was like, you've got to go to sleep. You've got to go to sleep or whatever. You have a big scene, your only big scene with Bryan Cranston. But on that Insider podcast, Vince talks about the cast, how he cast me. and he says like, yeah, he was shown a bunch of, certain kind of type, and he's like, that's not what I'm looking for. I want something different for Saul. um and the cast director's like, well, she's not right, but here, I want you to look at this. And he was like, that's what I want. So I was like,
I love
and
it.
that, isn't it what, that's how random this business and
It's
is.
crazy.
It's
Like
really never know.
you could go in and audition for the same casting director hundreds of times and never get something. But what I found out is that they keep calling you back because they like you and they
Right.
want you for something. So really, oftentimes, here a little bit of masterclass here is there, booking the room is sometimes just as important as getting the role, because that, Mid Thunder casting in New Mexico. I mean, the
Absolutely.
go-to casting people, I mean, because New Mexico is big, but it's also can be a small pool because you wind up seeing a lot of people in these shows. Or In Plain Sight was another one. I got to do
Right.
several episodes of that. That was a lot of fun.
I think I auditioned for that. So I never was on it. I auditioned for that
I
like
was
4
on like
million
4 or 5
times.
episodes. The one that stands out to me is it was an episode called "A Priest Walks into a Bar" with Joe Spano.
Oh, wow.
And I get thrown up against a wall and smashed around in a strip club. It was kind
Oh,
of
wow.
exciting. But again, it's just so much fun. So Breaking Bad ends. There's talk of Better Call Saul. We don't know what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, now it's become real. And of course, there are going to be new characters, clearly, like Rhea, and his name is Howard Hamlin's, yeah,
Patrick Fabian.
Patrick.
And
And then you get to come back. So what is that conversation like when you find out this world's coming back, but now it's a couple years behind or a couple years before Breaking Bad? They've given different sort of, that was one thing they were smart with of these shows, is they didn't really give dates. So it could kind of stand the test of time. They've done that with several things because they
right.
want it to be evergreen. But how does the conversation go? Who calls you? Does Vince call you and say, we want you to come back, or your agent? I mean,
No, it's really just, I mean, like, uh, it came back, and I knew the show was coming back. But I was like, who knows when I'll come back, because I don't know where they're starting in the story. And then, literally, I wasn't in it until like, I think the 3rd season, right? That
yeah,
Francesca
roughly.
comes back. So I was like, well, they'll bring me when they bring me. If I get to go, I'm, kept like burning all of the sages and everything. Like, please, Lord, let me go back. I was like, I will brush Bob's hair. I will do whatever you want. I'll work at the MVD for one scene, whatever you need.
Yeah, that was great.
But I got I think it was just casting reached out to my agent and said, hey, they want her back. And I was like, awesome. But I had no idea for how much. And, I had a whole lot that first ride back, that first season 3. It was just so fun. Like it was fun to see where she started.
Yeah.
And from tip to, you're in good hands with these guys. Like I would, go and hold the phone book or do whatever they wanted me to do in the background if that's what they wanted, because the stories are just so incredible to dive into as an actor. Just the world they create, top to tail, like all the design choices. So like, like I would say Francesca is a minor character, but just the attention to detail, like in the wardrobe. So like at the beginning, if you look at it, the color palette and things that Francesca's in, it's like automatically you feel a certain way because I'm in pinks and
you're very fresh and ripe and ready to go. But she drives the story though. Like there's those characters that move the story forward. Even in the end, when you get your story in Jean's world, you're a slumlord or dealing with the potheads, which I thought was so apropos and Shakespearean for her.
1,000%.
So like that's how she ends we get her story to end. It couldn't have been any better.
So great.
And even in that last bit, she still has some sort of feeling and of sympathy for him, when he calls her on the payphone and tries to shyster her out of the money, but says, you're going to pay me for this because I'm putting my life on the line. I mean, it just couldn't have ended any better. And I thought that was cool to see that your storyline got an ending. We got to kind of see what happened to her after shit, pardon me, went down. And you know,
Totally.
and
But it's
she's still okay, even though she's being watched, and that sort of thing. There's still he's a little bit of like compassion in your character to say, I'm going to do this one last thing for you, and this is going to be it because you've really jacked my world up.
yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, she it's almost like a dysfunctional marriage.
A little
Uh,
bit, yeah.
like like she's invested in this relationship for so long that you just can't she can't give it, like, if to it's hard for her to cut it off,
It's like an
a
abusive relationship
little.
almost.
Well, yeah,
Not
but
physical, but just sort of
no,
like,
but you put so much effort into something
yeah, you don't
and
want to
so
give
much of
up.
your life, and it's like it's got to turn at some point. It's going to change, or at some point, I will have, she's making money, she's, he probably at some point she's going to get to take that trip she's keeps planning.
Yeah.
I like to say, like, she's has the passport so that they can leave the country, when they need to, but it has no stamps because she's never able to leave. Like, she's planned lots of trips, she probably has lots of partial tickets. She probably has tons of gift certificates to spas that, here's a gift, 10,000 waves for you, from Saul, like, apologies. But she, could never, like, as soon as she sat in the pool, it'd be like her Bluetooth would be going off or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
there was never like a moment for her to just relax a little bit and go. But
no.
I mean, although, even in the beginning, he sort of reels her in a little bit that we get in the Better Call Saul world, when she comes to apply to work for both of them. It's
Yeah.
like she loves Kim because Kim sort of brings normalcy to things. And when things sort of get weird a little bit and he's starting to do some shystery stuff, she still wants to believe the very best. And then when they
Yeah.
break up and sort of go their separate ways, you're like, where's Kim at? And,
Yeah.
the glue that holds it together. Fantastic. All the success is well deserved on this. You just did a beautiful job. It was so fun watching you in Breaking Bad. And now
Oh, thanks.
to have you, of course, in Better Call Saul and to have this conversation, I want to ask you one last question.
Sure.
Uh, because we did talk about your theater group that you run there in Dallas. That's a huge part of your background.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that, because I think that's probably something maybe a lot of people might not know about you, or they might, and I'm just assuming. But let's talk about it because that's huge, because it's got to be great for the people that you work with to have you involved, especially with your experience in this show and all the other projects you've done.
Well, yeah, I've been with Kitchen Dog Theater in Dallas, Texas. I've worked with them since 1993, so
Yeah,
forever
long
ever,
time.
forever ever. And I'm the co-artistic director here, with my coworker Chris Carlos since 2005. So yeah, it's kind of like my grown child. Sometimes it's nice to me, sometimes it's, like a child, terrible. But we do, but we do uh new plays, contemporary plays, really committed to new work. I think I'd say 86% of what we do are premieres for the region, plays you wouldn't probably see otherwise. So pretty proud of our track record in new play development. We're about to, hopefully, if everything goes right, of course it's the absolute wrong time to start all this, but we hopefully will be renovating a building that we now own into a theater at the end, start renovating hopefully at the end of this year. So
Wow.
we'll have our own space finally. We're about a 32-year-old company, so it's kind of exciting final chapter in our
That's very cool.
evolution. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. We'll see once we get in it how happy I am. She'll turn into Francesca probably, but that's something I share in common with Francesca, is like sometimes you're like, okay, when can I go on a trip, or what's my life, because I'm over here building a set, or now I've got to travel and do this for work. It's not to complain, because it's a great life, but I have a similar situation of like a passport with no stamps.
I love it. Except
Yeah.
you're not laundering money for a shyster
No,
lawyer.
no, exactly. It's like one of those things, like, learn from Francesca, learn from your rules, take your trip to Paris, even though
Yeah,
Paris
well,
is.
you deserve it because you just have worked your behind off the last 10 years, and to finally have all of this completed and just so smartly written, and really,
Oh my
again,
God.
going back to the beginning of our conversation, so great that you got an opportunity to relive this role again and create a
Oh my
different
God,
version.
yeah.
I had Jeremiah Batsui on a few months ago, and we talked about how it was like for him to come back and play Victor again. He's like, well, I'm a little bit older and a little bit heavier. The jean jacket doesn't fit as nicely, but it's
Right.
still fun to hop in the Suburban and play this like, massive, massive thing.
Oh my
Um,
God, yeah. I mean, all of us, I mean, it's interesting just because I think we all have that experience of like, any of us would go back like here, it's one scene, two lines, that's all you got. And it's like, I will make time and I will do it or whatever, just because these kind of scripts and the kind of energy that the group, everybody from your showrunners to your stars to your PAs to catering, like everybody's energy is just really about let's make the best thing. Let's challenge each other to make the best thing. And it's rare, man. It's a rare breed. And hopefully lightning will strike again and I get to be part of another world that's like that. But it was truly one of the best
yeah,
experiences of my
I
life.
mean, one of the best things to come out of New Mexico,
Oh my God.
entertainment wise. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has
Of
been a
course.
blast, and we appreciate you coming on.
Okay. No, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.